My circle gets small, I think I know something. I don't trust niggas, they can't know nothing. Riding with the blick, I know they want something. My own blood, hands out like I own some aid. I hope it ease the pain, but it don't go away. I just close my eyes and pray for better days, yeah, yeah. I wish somebody told me it was gonna.
In a world where the spotlight shines bright on big names, a young and ambitious rapper was on the cusp of stardom. Her music was a symphony of hope and determination, echoing the dreams of a generation. With collaborations on the horizon, her future seemed brighter than the lights of the city that never sleeps. But in an instant, the rhythm of her life was silenced by the deadly sound of gunfire in Columbus. The question on everyone's mind is, was this a senseless act of violence, a victim of circumstance, or a premeditated crime that targeted a rising star? The answers, much like the truth, are complex and multifaceted. As we delve into the story of this talented artist, Courtney Bruce, we'll unravel the threads of fate that led to her tragic demise. We'll explore the what-ifs, the maybes, and the could-haves in a quest to understand the circumstances that stole her away from her loved ones, leaving behind only memories and the haunting question, what if? It's a story that will take us on a journey of twists and turns, of triumph and tragedy, and of the unfulfilled promise of a life cut short. And at the center of it all is a young woman who had the world at her feet, with a talent that was undeniable and a passion that was infectious. Her name will become synonymous with tragedy and loss. But for now, let's just say that her music and her memory will live on, even as we struggle to come to terms with the senseless act that took her from us. As we pay tribute to Courtney Bruce's memory, our thoughts and prayers are with her family, who must now navigate the darkest of times. We invite you to join us on this journey, to sit tight and watch till the end, as we uncover the truth behind the tragic story of a life that was taken too soon. The next few minutes will be a roller coaster of emotions, a testament to the human spirit, and a reminder that even in the darkest of times, there is always hope. So, let's embark on this journey together, and may the truth be the catalyst for healing, justice, and a celebration of the life and legacy of a talented young artist. A warm welcome to Shocking Facts True Crime. Here we unravel details behind every true crime stories. We value your support. Kindly support us by subscribing to our channel, hit the notification bell so you don't miss the next shocking true crime story. In the heart of Columbus, Ohio, where breaking into the music industry is a battle against the odds, Courtney Bruce was carving out a space entirely her own. But she wasn't just another artist trying to make it. She was a force, a movement, an unstoppable presence. To the world, she was known as Boog the Bandit, a rising pop and rap star who refused to conform. Her music was raw, vulnerable, and deeply personal, setting her apart from the underground scene. But before the fame, before the music, there was a different story, a story of struggle, redemption, and a young woman fighting for her future. And just when it seemed like she was on the brink of something extraordinary, it was all taken away. Courtney Bruce didn't start her journey as Boog the Bandit. Before the music, before the spotlight, she was a young woman trying to reclaim her life. In 2019, she walked out of prison after serving 2 years for conspiracy to commit bank fraud. Her past was complicated, her reputation tarnished, and the road ahead uncertain. She could have let that moment define her, but Courtney refused to be trapped by her mistakes. Instead, she made a choice to rise. Even before music entered the picture, Courtney had already found her way into the public eye. She had the kind of striking presence that turned heads, and it wasn't long before she landed modeling gigs with major brands like Chris Brown's Black Pyramid and Rob Kardashian's Arthur George. She had the look, the style, the confidence. But for Courtney, that wasn't enough. She wanted to be more than just a face in a campaign. She wanted to be a voice. So she took a leap of faith. She stepped away from modeling and poured herself into music. The moment Boog the Bandit released her first song, it was clear. This wasn't just a passion. It was her calling. Her music wasn't about flash or trends. It was about truth. She sang about loneliness, heartbreak, resilience, the kind of emotions most artists avoid. Inspired by global stars like Justin Bieber and Billie Eilish, she blended pop and rap into something entirely her own. That same year, she released Hot Topic, a track that quickly gained traction beyond Columbus. The song racked up over 100,000 views on YouTube, putting her on the industry's radar. People were starting to listen. With momentum on her side, Boog followed up with Hard Away and Risky, solidifying her place as an artist to watch. Each track showcased her ability to balance vulnerability with strength, a rare quality that made her stand out. She wasn't just another underground rapper, she was a pop star with something real to say. And people took notice. DJ academics and fellow Ohio native Trippie Redd started paying attention. Industry insiders were watching, and it was clear Boog the Bandit was next up. She was poised for something bigger than Columbus. She was on the verge of national recognition. But behind the rising fame, there was another transformation happening. Boog wasn't just rebuilding her career, she was rebuilding herself. On Valentine's Day, 2021, she made a decision that marked a fresh start, not just in music, but in her soul. She was baptized, publicly declaring her desire to leave the mistakes of her past behind. For Courtney, this wasn't just symbolic. It was her way of saying, "I'm ready to move forward." And she was. Her name was growing, her music was spreading, and the world was beginning to see her potential. But then, it all came to a sudden, tragic end. Columbus, Ohio, like many cities, was battling rising gun violence. In 2021, the city saw 166 homicides, with 138 caused by firearms. On May 20th, 2021, Boog the Bandit became the 75th victim. Her life, a life filled with struggle, resilience, and the promise of something greater, was stolen before she could fully realize her potential. She had fought so hard to build a future. She had escaped her past, found her purpose, and was ready to take the world by storm. While she was rebuilding her life, forces beyond her control were beginning to take shape. Forces that would lead to a shocking and tragic end. And in the blink of an eye, everything she had worked for was stolen from her. What happened next would leave those who knew her asking, was her transformation enough to escape the shadows of her past? Or was she pulled back in just as she was starting to rise? The sun dipped low over Columbus's east side, casting long shadows across Dart Place. It was May 20th, 2021, an ordinary Thursday, unremarkable in every way. It should have stayed that way. At 26 years old, Courtney Bruce, better known by her stage name Boog the Bandit, sat in the driver's seat of a parked car. Music had been her life, her escape, her future. She was on the brink of something big, her name beginning to carve its place in the world. Beside her sat a 25-year-old man, his identity largely kept out of the public eye. He was there in that moment, and yet history would barely remember him. The street was quiet. A row of houses, a few parked cars, the kind of neighborhood where doors stayed locked and people kept to themselves. Then, from the shadows, movement. A group of men approached the car. Their steps were quick, their intentions clear. They weren't here to talk. They weren't here to negotiate. They were here for her. And they came armed. The next few seconds unfolded in a blur, voices rising, hands moving, guns flashing, an attempted robbery, a demand for something. Money, jewelry, revenge. Courtney didn't get the chance to find out. Gunfire shattered the night. The sharp crack of bullets tore through the air, ricocheting off metal, slamming through the car. In the chaos, She was hit. A bullet, maybe more. The pain was immediate, searing. Blood. The world blurred. Her hands trembled against the steering wheel, breath shallow, fading. Her companion, unharmed, and he didn't waste time. With a desperate urgency, he threw the car into gear, tires screeching as he sped off. The men who had fired the shots, left behind. The echoes of gunfire still rang in his ears, but all he could hear was his own heartbeat, pounding like a war drum. There was only one destination, Mount Carmel East Hospital. The streets blurred past, but every red light, every turn, stole precious seconds. Courtney's body slumped beside him. She was slipping away. By the time they reached the hospital, the walls painted in fluorescent light and the sterile smell of antiseptic, it was already too late. 6:11 p.m. Courtney Bruce, Boog the Bandit, was pronounced dead. Just like that. A rising star, a dreamer, a fighter, gone. Word spread fast. The news rippled through Columbus, then beyond. The city stood still in shock. The streets murmured with grief and disbelief. How? Why? At first it seemed like a case of a robbery gone wrong, another senseless act of violence in a world that had too much of it already. A tragic accident. But as investigators arrived at Dart Place, piecing together the fragments of that violent night, things didn't quite add up. Shell casings littered the pavement, a grim constellation of violence. The sound of gunfire had silenced the usual evening sounds, the laughter of children playing, the hum of passing cars. And yet, no one saw anything, or at least no one was willing to say they did. The whispers started almost immediately. Was it a setup? Was she targeted? Why had her companion walked away without a scratch? The questions circled like vultures, but the answers never came. The streets of Columbus had claimed another soul that night, and in the silence that followed, only one thing remained certain. The echoes of those gunshots would never really fade. The evening of May 20th, 2021, had ended in tragedy. Courtney Bruce, widely known as Boog the Bandit, had been gunned down in a violent robbery on Dart Place, a quiet residential street on Columbus's east side. Though her 25-year-old companion escaped unharmed, she was not as fortunate. By the time police arrived at the scene, the damage was already done. Shell casings littered the pavement. The neighborhood, usually alive with activity, was eerily quiet. Detectives immediately secured the crime scene, marking areas where bullets had struck, looking for clues that could help them understand what had happened. But there was a problem. No one saw anything, or at least no one was willing to say they had. Homicide detectives knew they had to act fast. The sooner they could gather evidence, identify suspects, and establish a motive, the better chance they had of solving the case before the trail went cold. They turned to forensic evidence first. Ballistics experts worked to match the shell casings to potential firearms, and officers canvassed the area for surveillance footage that might have captured the attackers fleeing. Meanwhile, police tracked down Boog's companion, hoping his first-hand account would help fill in the missing details. Days later, a breakthrough came. The first suspect emerged. As investigators pieced together the timeline of events, one name kept surfacing: Kyson Murphy. Just 22 years old, Murphy had a history of violent crime, and both physical evidence and witness testimony linked him to the murder. But why? Why was Boog the Bandit targeted? As detectives pushed forward, a chilling truth came to light. Boog hadn't just been in the wrong place at the wrong time, she had been lured there. Detectives discovered that Boog had agreed to meet with Murphy and his associates that evening. The meeting was supposedly to discuss plans for a rap video project, a collaboration that could have furthered her career. But Murphy and his crew had other plans. Instead of discussing music, they had set up an ambush. Their goal? Robbery. At some point during the encounter, guns were drawn. They demanded cash, jewelry, and anything of value. The Columbus music scene was devastated. She wasn't just another artist. She was a rising star, someone who had worked tirelessly to make a name for herself. Fans, friends, and fellow musicians flooded social media with tributes. The hashtag Justice for Boog began trending as thousands demanded answers and accountability. A GoFundMe page was launched to help her family with funeral expenses. The city, still grappling with the rising tide of gun violence, mourned another senseless loss. But while the community grieved, police pushed forward. They weren't just searching for answers anymore. They were closing in on justice. With Kyson Murphy identified as a prime suspect, police doubled down on their investigation. More details about his criminal background emerged. He had a long history of violent offenses, including involvement in other robberies and shootings. But Murphy hadn't acted alone. Detectives soon identified another suspect, Jumada Williams II, also 22 years old. He had been one of Murphy's accomplices that night, and under the weight of mounting evidence, he confessed. Williams pleaded guilty to involuntary manslaughter and aggravated robbery, admitting his role in the botched setup that led to Boog's death. With enough evidence and testimony, police officially charged Murphy with murder and aggravated robbery. He was arrested and held without bail, awaiting trial. Even as arrests were made, questions remained. Was Boog the intended target? Had Murphy and his crew planned only to rob her, or was there a deeper reason behind the violence? Did someone set her up? No clear answers emerged. What was certain, however, was that Boog the Bandit's life was stolen far too soon. A city demanded justice. A family mourned their loss, and the echoes of that night's gunfire would never truly fade. The trial was a dramatic and emotional affair, with Boog's family and friends in attendance. Murphy's defense team argued that he was not responsible for Boog's death and that the shooting was an accident. However, the prosecution presented a mountain of evidence, including surveillance footage and witness testimony, that proved Murphy's guilt. In the end, Murphy was found guilty of murder and aggravated robbery, and he was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The community breathed a sigh of relief, knowing that justice had been served. But for Boog's family, the pain of losing their loved one would never subside. They would always remember her as a bright and talented young woman who was taken from them far too soon. As the detective handling the case said, "We're killing each other at an alarming rate. To 80% of our homicide victims and suspects are typically young black men. Being a black man myself, this offends me incredibly. And if it doesn't offend you as a black person in this community, and you don't find a way to passionately figure out how we can reduce it, you are also a part of the problem." The words hung in the air, a stark reminder of the reality that faced the community. The death of Boog the Bandit was not just a tragedy. It was a wake-up call, a reminder that the violence had to stop. The community had to come together to find a solution, to support each other, and to prevent such senseless acts of violence from happening again. The memory of Boog the Bandit would live on, but it was up to the community to ensure that her death was not in vain. In the months and years that followed, the community came together to honor Boog's memory and to work towards a solution to the violence that had taken her life. As the news of Courtney Bruce's death spread, a wave of grief washed over those who knew her best. She was more than just Boog the Bandit, a rising star in the hip-hop world. She was a daughter, a sister, a friend, and a shining light in the lives of everyone she touched. Her mother, Lisa Harrington, spoke through tears about the dreams she had for her daughter and the unshakable determination that had driven Boog to build a better life for herself and those she loved. Boog's music was more than just entertainment. It was her story, her way of sharing her struggles and victories with the world. She had always envisioned using her success to support her family and had often spoken about her biggest goal, to buy her mother a home. It was a dream she was actively working towards when her life was cut short, leaving behind a void that could never be filled. The city mourned not just the loss of a rising talent, but the loss of a young woman who had been trying to rise above her circumstances, only to have it all stolen from her in an instant. Boog's story was a stark reminder of how fragile life can be. One moment filled with promise and ambition, the next, a life cut short. As the community came together to remember Boog, they couldn't help but wonder what could have been done to prevent her tragic end. How could they protect rising stars like Boog, who dreamed of transforming their lives and uplifting those around them? How could they create safer spaces where talent wasn't extinguished before it had the chance to shine? These were the questions that lingered in the air as the city struggled to come to terms with the loss of a young woman who had so much to offer. Boog's rise to fame was no accident. It was built on her resilience, raw talent, and the dream of a better future. But her tragic end highlighted a harsh reality. The systemic challenges faced by emerging artists are as dangerous as they are unrelenting. What do you think? Do you believe people can truly escape their past, or are some fates impossible to outrun? Let me know your answers in the comments section. As the days turned into weeks, and the weeks turned into months, the community continued to grapple with the loss of Boog. They knew that her story was not unique, and that there were countless other young artists out there who were facing similar challenges. They knew that something had to be done to change this, to create a world where talent could flourish without being threatened by violence and tragedy. As you listen to Boog's story, remember that her legacy is not just about her music, but about the impact she had on those around her. Remember that she was a daughter, a sister, a friend, and a rising star who was taken from us far too soon. And remember that her story is a call to action, a reminder that we must do more to protect our emerging artists and talents, and to create safer spaces where talent can flourish. If you haven't already, like this video and share it with someone who needs to hear Boog's story. Subscribe for more true crime stories that uncover the truth and seek justice. Thanks for watching till the end, and we'll see you in our next true crime story. If this chilling story sent shivers down your spine, make sure to share the video, subscribe to the channel for more true crime stories. Don't forget to hit the notification bell to ensure you never miss a new video.